Casser-Jayne, and welcome to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, a smart, witty, and timely podcast brought to you at a time when Americans are getting fed up with all the shouting and bickering in Washington, D.C. So I, Halli Casser-Jayne, and veteran White House correspondent Matthew Cooper are here to offer you an insightful, engaging journey into the world of politics, always with a smile and dialogue that snap, crackles, and pops. And with our very special guest, we strive to offer a different take on all things politics in our weekly conversations. So, pour yourselves a martini, grab a spot on your favorite sofa, and have a listen as we tackle it all and like to stir and sometimes shake things up. On this episode of the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, Robert Mueller speaks. Trump speaks. Joe Biden speaks. Kim Jong Un speaks through his firing of missiles. But the question of our time, is anybody listening to each other? And that's just where we begin this week on the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, when I and my partner in politics, veteran White House correspondent Matthew Cooper, and the authors of I Think You're Wrong, But I'm Listening, Sarah Stewart Holland and Beth Silvers speak. These stories and more, and we're just beginning. Here we go. Matthew Cooper, we're back again, and I am like saying, how in the hell did we get here? This week went so fast. Every week is going so fast. But you know what? Not fast enough to get Trump out of office like tomorrow. It's like,
I hear you.
Can it be over soon? Can it be over soon? So we start with this, because we're going to jump right in, folks, today, because we got a lot to get to. We have very little time. Trump, North Korea, Trump, crazy. Trump goes to Japan. Trump is a lunatic as far as I'm concerned. You wanted to talk about this. This was on your wish list, so let's start with. So he goes to Japan Memorial Day weekend to play golf and to watch sumo wrestling.
You know, I think the president, the Prime Minister Abe in Japan, I think has done the best job of sort of managing Trump of any of the allies who don't like Trump. In other words, I think compared to Macron, May, Merkel, certainly, he's kind of got the best management of Trump, or at least that's what I thought before this week. But, of course, Trump goes over there. He kind of, he barks a bit on trade. He dismisses the North Korean missile tests as no big deal. Those are things that are not going to warm Japanese heart. Even though Abe set up lots of things Trump would like sumo wrestling and golf and, food that's close to being what he eats normally. They sort of, and they let Trump make up a trophy for sumo wrestlers that Trump can claim is the greatest thing ever. So I think Abe is a good window into Trump as sort of like what you have to do as a foreign leader to manage him, because you can't really afford to piss off a U.S. president. That said, Trump pulling out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership really, gave away a lot of leverage that the U.S. had in trying to have a coalition against China on trade. And instead, Trump has resorted to the blunderbuss weapon of tariffs when he could have had something so much more effective. So, it's crazy time. As you said, it's crazy time.
It really is craasy time. And I have to tell you, you watch it go by day by day by day. Trump excels at golf and eating, as I said, and all the pomp and the circumstance, if you will. And anything else, the guy is an absolute moron. Now, how in the hell does he stand with Abe and talk about North Korea being his best friend? It's their archenemy. What is the guy even beginning to think? And what are the advisors around him thinking, Matt? Why do these people keep staying
Trump
with him?
Basically dissing Bolton. And, you just know that, if you go to work for him, you should just know that there's going to come your time in the box where he's going to just rip into you.
You're finished. The minute you go to work for him, you know that sooner or later you're over.
Yeah.
Okay, so why go?
And if you're Kim, what do you read out of this week? You have Trump saying, firing some short-range missiles, no big deal.
Oh, I get it. I get what he's doing. It's so stupidly obvious. I mean, it's how Trump operates in everything that he does. I mean, he always takes the enemy and thinks that if he makes the enemy his friend, or plays his enemy as a friend, that the enemy will ultimately not be the enemy and will be the friend. This is typical behavior, by the way, of an abused child who goes to the person who's abusing them and does everything that they can to make them, endear themselves to the abuser, and maybe the abuse will stop. I mean, it's so simplistic, it's absurd.
Right. But he's fond of the dictators who are not abusing him. They're just because they're strongmen, right?
Well, if you're a strongman, you are an abuser, and it's somebody to fear.
Well, that's true. They don't have to abuse him, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
They just have to be it.
Right. You can imagine the crazy that this guy, and I'm going to talk to you about this, and I'll bring it up right now. I mean, I'm bringing up Howard Stern. Howard Stern does this hour, interview with, what's his name on CNN?
Anderson
Cooper. Yeah. Okay. And I thought, if they weren't good buddies, what is, to the rest of the world at this point, Howard Stern's kind of off the, ozone somewhere. But Howard Stern spent the entire interview psychoanalyzing Donald Trump, as does everybody, by the way, including you and I, as if there's an answer, as if anything that you might come up with will justify who this dude is. None of it does. And he said, the father was abusive and he never got help for the abuse. His mother must have been abusive too, because he had it from all sides. And then he was abused, in military academy, because military academy in those days was like the nuns beating the crap out of you if you went to Catholic school. So that's who he is. So what? What he never did was grow up. And I think that's the thing. People want to keep imparting some kind of an adult thought mode to Trump. And Trump acts like a 3-year-old.
Yeah. No. I mean, that's right.
Okay. And he keeps getting away with it. So what America is doing is spoiling the 3-year-old or the terrible 2-year-old, because whatever he does, he doesn't get punished for. He gets away with, which is the other thing I wanted to talk to you so badly about this week, because isn't that true? Can you think of anything that Trump has done? He's done only wrong in terms of, breaking every norm that there is and laws that there are and obstructing, and he gets away with it. Now, why is that? Nancy Pelosi's letting him get away with it. The Republicans are getting him away with it. Journalists are letting him get away with it because everybody hems and haws. But has anybody held this dude accountable? Please talk to me. I'm feeling anger today. Could you tell?
Right. No, I can tell that. Well, let's start with the Republicans. I mean, he's totally co-opted them. I mean, they are so delighted to have some tax cuts that, they'll do anything.
For a tax cut, honey, I would do anything for, like a really good stud guy.
Yeah.
For 2 weeks.
Okay. Good to know. But here's the thing. They're just so excited about tax cuts. They'll just do anything for him to get another court nominee or whatever. So Republicans, I think their motives are clear. Democrats, I think, are torn about tactics, but they certainly want to take him out.
No, not all of them.
Well, I mean, they're not all agreed on impeachment, but they want to find a way to disable this presidency and then, eject him from office.
Okay, can I stop you there for 1 second? Because you said it.
Yeah.
Disable I was going to say pregnancy. Where the hell is my mind? Disable the presidency. That's what I'm talking about. Nobody has. Bob Mueller folded. Everybody folds. Nobody is. So let me take it to you where I really wanted to go with you on this, and that is, this is getting dangerous in terms, that's what I'm thinking. I think he's gone so far, he's not being held accountable, and every little thing that he does leads to the next. I'm not sure we can recover now, and I'm not sure what everybody is waiting for, Matthew, and I'm not hysterical. I think that there are real issues here that he's getting away with, and the country is losing its footing to a point where we could be at a point of no return.
Could be. It's my weekly could be. We should
this is why Matt and I get along so well, because he knows when to calm me down with a giggle, because he knows my blood pressure's going real high right now. What?
I play my Could Be theme song.
Thank you, darling. Could Be.
Well, look, it's, it's bad, and he certainly is, proceeding with his agenda as much as he can. I don't have an easy answer for you.
But do you think I'm right that we're getting to a point of no return?
Well, no return in the sense that Trump can do a lot of damage for the next 6 years.
I think he's already done a lot of damage to the republic.
I think he can. I don't know if after Trump we kind of reset back to something normal, or if this is the new normal. I tend to think it's the former, that,
I don't think we reset, and as a matter of fact,
there is going to be some equilibrium after we're done with this guy. But
I don't know about that. I don't know.
But I don't know. I've talked to different people about it who I think are smarter than me. And some say, well, it's like McCarthy. Like when he was gone and he got disgraced, the country was really done with that. I think it's worse than that, because he's the president, not a rogue senator.
Right. But
I don't know. Look, you're right to be concerned. I'm not diminishing what you're saying.
Well, the reason that I'm saying it, though, is not because I am concerned, but I'm wondering why people like Nancy Pelosi and all these dudes, in the Congress, Democrats in the House and the Senate. But I think
the answer. Like she's made a calculation.
Well, she's gone political.
It's wrong. You may think it's wrong, but it's a reasonable calculation that impeachment will not be to the benefit of Democrats. That it will be to the benefit of Trump, because it's not where the country is, and that's.
So let me run this by you. If they don't impeach him and then he gets reelected, then what does she say? It's a hell of a calculation. That's something that needs to be.
Well, I think she'll say it wouldn't have worked.
Well, she could say, but I mean, she'll be. I guess she's gambling. She's done anyway, so I guess that's what she's got.
Well, no, I think she would say, look, it's the Senate. There's no chance the Senate will impeach him, and then why go through the exercise and potentially embolden him? So
there are a lot of writers, a lot of people who were around during the impeachment of Nixon, and even in the impeachment of Clinton, who were saying that the meme that people are putting out is completely wrong. The story has been retold as well, and one thing we both know is that whatever anybody says on Twitter becomes fact now, whether it's factual or it isn't. I tested that out to see. You can pretty much post anything you want on Twitter and somebody's going to believe you just because you posted it and you've got a little bit of, a clout.
Yeah.
So that's what that's what Trump has taught the Republicans to do, by the way, which is just say what you want them to believe and they will believe you. And they are right.
Well, I think we saw with the Russian disinformation, lots of things. Sure. There's just a lot of crap out there that people are prepared to believe.
And if he says it, they will believe it. By the same token, if the Democrats say something, they will believe it, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's questioning anything. It's not a good thing. And I don't think that the press is doing a particularly good job. And I call myself a member of the press, as you are. I don't think we're doing a great job getting the facts out because people aren't interested in the painful facts. I really don't want to have to read about the facts. This is what Trump has done, and this is what I saw done in Salvador, and I saw it in Nicaragua, and I saw it in Guatemala, and what we're seeing in Venezuela. This is how and we saw it in Nazi Germany. This is how this happens. It needs to be pointed out. I'm sorry if I'm being redundant and crazy. I go on.
You mean spreading lies?
Yeah, spreading lies is the whole game. If you spread the right lie, you create the right atmosphere, you get through to the people. I mean, you read Mein Kampf, there's chapters and chapters on it, and you follow Trump, it's exactly what he does. But I'm not only blaming Trump, because I see it on both sides now, to some degree. There is truth out there, but you can manipulate people who aren't able to give you their full undivided attention by just saying things and being assertive when you say them so that they are deemed fact. And you can't override that because once the information is out, even when it's wrong, you can't, it's like a newspaper story in the New York Times. You write a retraction, it's on page 900 and who reads it and it doesn't matter anyway. The truth is already there or the wrong fact is already there to be believed.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's an information warfare problem.
Yeah, well, okay. So it's problematic. He also, besides his little crap with Kim Jong Un and his battle with his NSC advisor, Mr. Bolton, who I'm surprised those two don't get along better. Maybe it's because they're two peas of the same pod. He also went after Joe Biden when he was overseas. That's a no.
No, that violates the tradition that you don't criticize a president when he's overseas, and a president doesn't engage in domestic politics.
So he took on the problems that Israel's having, and boy, are they big problems. And he took on Bibi's problems, and he took on Biden. Biden shot back today.
He had nicer. He had nicer things to say about Kim Jong Un than he did about Biden, and he made up this what's got to be a bullshit quote that, Kim Jong Un attacked Biden as a low IQ individual.
Really. Yeah.
Either A, he didn't say it, or B, he said it because, they're just playing Trump. Either way, why you would cite Kim Jong Un as like backing up your point, You try to imagine like Reagan saying, as Kim Il-sung said, Mondale's a dope.
Hey, that's pretty damn good. I never heard you do that one before. Wait a second. Well, how delicious. Thanks. More.
Absolutely. My first Secretary of State, Al Haig, was dumb as a rock and very low IQ. I fired him.
Are you still doing your stand-up thing?
No, I haven't felt funny for a long time. So. It's always good to imagine another president saying something Trump says, and then you just can't picture it.
Well, there you go. I think it's really, really true. We ought to do that more often, as they say. Okay, well, we brought up Biden, so we'll go with Biden for a little bit, just to say that there's some stuff going on with Biden right now. I guess tonight he's giving a little, roundtable conversation with some voters. He hasn't been out on the trail. The press is starting to go after him. They want to get him out there.
We can only be about 2 weeks away from like the New York Times front page story about, questionable donations to the Biden Foundation. That's probably 2 weeks out.
I tell you what, really, right?
In the Senate, banks found an ally in Biden.
They've started to trickle out. I forget. I saw one today that just cracked me up. And then the crime bill thing that, by the way, that Trump brought up. I thought that was hilarious. He of the ready to lynch the Central Park 5, and not only that, at the time that he was a real proponent of the Crime Act bill the time that it happened, and he was a Democrat at the time, and he was all in on it. So, hello. And by the way, that crime bill thing, that's another example of what I was talking about, because so much misinformation has been put out there about it. Right?
Tons. No. Liberals are totally deluded about that bill.
Exactly.
They don't really understand what happened, what it actually did, what it didn't
and why
do.
It was so. Why it had to be done then, with the crime rate just soaring at that point in history.
Yeah, and they don't realize a lot of the growth in the prison population is because of states predating that.
It's really interesting how, again, I think my point, is made there, and that's a perfect example of what's going on. But anyway, so Trump goes after Biden. The president was going after Biden, and they even went after his crowd sizes. Is that like his mushroom size compared to Trump's? I mean, it's just like, stop it, you guys! What are you doing? It's the beginning. He's playing it so smart, and they want to flesh him out.
Wait, who's playing it so smart? Biden?
Yeah, I think of course he is. I mean, why make noise if you've got the numbers? Yeah,
I think that's right. But he does, and this is just armchair commentary. He does look older, and he does look. What's the French phrase for when you make the turn? I forget it, but you just make that, you make that turn and then you're old,
I don't know. I've never heard of that, and it terrifies me. I'm sorry you brought that up.
Someone who's looks pretty, spry, and then just.
He is spry, though. I told you in the very beginning I didn't like the way he looked, but I don't know whether he lost a lot of weight because his face is now far more angular and not fat. He needs to gain a bunch of pounds. I don't know if he had Botox. It looks to me like he may have had a little mini facial.
Well, he's always been a
very
get
vain.
some work done kind of guy. With
he's
plugs.
Hair plugs. He had his face done 1,000 times. He had his eyes done. I get that, but he doesn't look well. I agree with you, but I think he's actually looking better since he got on the stump than he did when he first started. So maybe he's starting to gain a little weight, or whatever work he had done on his face. May it be, be Botox or Restylane or one of the things they put in there is wearing off.
We're going to see how he plays.
But, I mean, he's never been a good presidential candidate, so hello.
No, I could see it either way. He could do well and be the nominee, or these numbers will collapse.
Right. I can't. Well, we'll see. I mean, they find something really just horrendous about him. Okay, how about climate change and Trump and the administration going bat?
Yeah, well, just when you thought it couldn't
crazy.
be any worse.
What is wrong with these people?
I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name, but they brought in the new fellow, the National Security Council.
Yeah, they're all the same.
One that says, carbon dioxide has been unfairly maligned.
I mean, you know what, buddy?
Like Jews in the Holocaust,
I find this just absolutely insane. Did you know that it was 86 degrees in the Antarctic the other day?
Yeah, you don't really think of that as possible.
And the melting is terrifying up there because the ice apparently has collected a lot of this bad stuff that's, in the ozone. Mm-hmm. And when it melts, it will be in the rivers, the streams, it's a nightmare. But hey, there's no such thing as climate change. Some responsible Republican is going to say, wait a minute.
Yeah, you think?
No, because I don't think there's such a thing. I think that something's very wrong with the people in that party.
There are some, but they're not eager.
Sort of like on abortion, which is the next thing I want to bring up very quickly.
Well, this is very interesting.
Go ahead, talk to me.
Well, the Supreme Court this morning upheld part of an Indiana law that Mike Pence signed that was designed to, basically eliminate abortions. They upheld the part that requires abortion clinics to, basically do funeral type arrangements for aborted fetuses. Women, though, if they want to pick up the remains and throw them in the garbage, are free to do so. It's a crazy law. They sidestepped the question of whether you can do sex selection abortions. I mean, look, these laws are coming in fast and furious, and the court's gonna do a delicate dance around them. And I still don't think they are gonna do reverse Roe in one decision, but they are. They're going to let a lot of these state laws stand, and not all of them. But,
okay, so that's on abortion, and that's a fight. Susan Collins today say, I don't get where all of this is coming from. Susan Collins said, and of course I posted my daily tweet to her. Today's a good day to go tell Susan Collins to go F herself, because she basically changed the court.
We can't say fuck. It's a podcast.
Then we have to tell them that we said fuck, and then they put it under, a big star.
Oh, okay.
So we really aren't supposed to do that. But that being said, okay. Now that the president said the word 1,000 times, I don't see why we can't. And he's, so I don't get too upset. But seriously, Susan, we need to get you out of office, because you are exactly the problem that causes all of this. I mean, oh my God.
Right.
She makes me crazy. But I do want to go back to that just to say that's the court. There's the political aspect of it as well, which is 67% of Americans do not want Roe. 67. I don't think we're agreed on anything in this country that much. Don't want Roe v. Wade overturned, and want choice to be, the law of the land. And Trump is and many of those are women. How crazy is Trump to take this on? Now, I thought, okay, he figures he can trade off on this one. It'll just excite his base. But I say, even I don't know if that's true. So politically, it's weird.
Right. Well, there's always been the thought that it's a sleeping tiger. That's sort of if you really did go repeal Roe v. Wade, it would awake the sleeping progressive giant that's out there, and all these, suburban women would then, flock to the Democratic side. And
didn't that happen in 2016?
Yeah, that did. I mean, 2018.
20,
Yeah, for a lot of reasons. But Look, and I think there are a lot of Republicans who cynically thought, well, they didn't really care about abortion, but they pandered to their base and they hoped the court wouldn't really overturn it.
But you got a bunch of crazies, the crazies have taken over the asylum. You have a Mike Pence.
I mean, it is amazing to me that I'm not shocked Alabama passed its law, but I am shocked that Ohio passed its one.
I know, Ohio's gone pretty crazy in the last 3 years. It has.
There's no question. It's gone. It's gone
full Trump. Yeah. I know. The rural vote takes over some of these states. It can't be true everywhere, but in some of these states it is true. Ohio has, Columbus and Cleveland. The rest of the state is farm country. Yeah,
well, Cincinnati, but I take your point.
Yeah.
But these are my point is just these are larger states. They're starting to do these bills, and
it's a northern state. You can say that. Yeah,
well,
right. Well, because we expect it in the Bible Belt. It's very scary. Okay, point made. Let's do something that I want to bring up. Franklin Graham calls for a special day of prayer to protect Trump from his enemies after Nancy said, thoughts and prayers to the president. One of her great lines that she came out with last week. I just want to tell you that I'm at war with Franklin Graham because I think this guy stands for everything that is wrong in all of this.
Yeah, well, like Trump, he's overshadowed by his father.
Right.
And he's never going to be his dad. And he's not a good guy. I mean,
he really is not a good guy.
The father is Michael Duffy and Nancy Gibbs' great book. I mean, he was a pastoral counselor to lots of presidents and, prayed for all of them. And,
so what?
Some of that was hokum, but he at least went through the exercise of doing that, whereas his son is just a crazy
lunatic.
Hyper partisan, kind of.
Okay.
Yeah. And plus he's in this financial deal with the pool boy. I mean, how crazy is that?
Is that him? No, that's not him. That's not him. That's the other one. That's Jerry Falwell Jr.
Oh, that's Falwell Jr.
Yeah, so they're all the juniors, by the way, and we, juniors have a hard time competing with papas.
Yeah.
It's an issue, but I bring that up and then I move it over to anti-Semitism and this week in anti-Semitism, which is
this week in anti-Semitism.
Germany tells Jews not to wear kippas to avoid discrimination. Draws international ire. The Brit government launches Labour anti-Semite probe. Oh my God. This is another one of those things that inches forward and nobody does anything to really stop it. Nope.
Yeah, I mean, it's a German thing, of course, is so resonant because it's Germany. And that's just, deeply disturbing. You want a government that's going to protect its citizens, not tell them to hide their religion. So it's, that's very disturbing.
I brought up Howard Stern, but I want to bring up Karen Tumulty, who said something.
My old colleague. And
I went a bat or two with her a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember what it was, but it was funny. But she did have a very good point yesterday or today, I think it was. She said journalists should stop repeating Trump's nicknames like Sleepy Old Joe. I think that is true. That would go a long way to curtail his crap. Just because he says it doesn't mean you have to repeat it.
No,
anybody who's listening to this podcast, don't repeat it. When he comes up with one of these horrendous, terrible things, don't do it. Don't say it. Don't repeat it. Don't retweet it. I think that would be a really, really, really good thing.
I agree. And, they're already screwing this up. I mean, they keep playing that fake Pelosi tape side by side with the real one.
I know.
But they keep airing it.
I know. And what about Facebook?
That was terrific. With Facebook.
And it's still up there. Have you seen it? Because on Facebook, every day they put a new caveat, a new star underneath with, don't read this and this isn't true. They won't take it down because it's clickbait. And
these are the people who can get an ad based on something you just bought at the grocery store into your
sickening.
face in 2 minutes.
It's sickening.
But they can't take this down.
Okay.
And they don't even seem interested in trying to.
No, they won't. And they never will. And it, this is, I recall you're leaving a certain news organization for the very reason, my honorable friend.
Yeah, I mean, I did indeed.
And I love you and respect you for doing that.
No, thank you.
More people should have the courage to stand up to the crap.
You.
Good, Matthew Cooper. Now, lightning round?
Yes, let's.
All right. GOP Senator says that if the House passes articles of impeachment against Trump, they will quickly quash them in the Senate. That's not a good thing.
No, they're supposed to at least debate it if the House sends them.
Yeah. So the warning shots have been fired, but oh well. 3 forecast models say Trump will win in 2020. That's scary.
Yeah,
Anything
I gotta
there?
say, I mean, look, he's very vulnerable. He's not that popular.
But they were wrong about 2018.
Yeah, and look, if the
you
economy softens, then it's even worse for him. But yeah, can he win? Sure.
Head of Drudge Report, the headline right now on Drudge Report. Let me go there real quickly while we're talking. Yeah. Did you see it?
Nope.
Bonds / recession warning.
Bonds, it said? Yeah, they're right. There was a sort of an alarmist piece.
Okay, well, so there you
go. Right. That the huge run-up in corporate debt is a looming problem.
Okay, but I've always felt that this thing wasn't going to hold much longer, so I think that's true. Roy Moore to
we've had an expansion for
40 years, right,
so.
through 2 presidencies. Roy Moore to announce run for Senate in June. From Alabama.
So excited. I may have to take leave from the show so I can help out.
That's just crazy. If they allow that to happen, that's just crazy.
It's
just crazy.
Let's see if he can win another Republican primary.
Christopher Steele will not participate in the Barr probe. I like that. Hope Hicks. Did you see that piece in the New York Times?
Yes.
Okay, well.
I mean, I'm generally pro Maggie Haberman, so I didn't, But that said, putting up the glam picture of her and.
Well, that Maggie Haberman's mother is like this big, glam lady, right?
I didn't know that. But.
Yeah, go look up Maggie Haberman's mother and find out what she does and why this makes sense to why this piece was written and this picture was taken up. That's all I'll say. I'll tease it. Go look, folks.
Okay. Well, I thought Ocasio-Cortez was very funny in her tweet. She said they've turned it into a Lifetime movie, Hope's Choice.
She doesn't have a choice in it, right?
Right. I mean, she's like everyone else who gets a subpoena, Yeah, you can balk at it, but, you could end up behind bars.
Trump's new response is way down, by the way.
Reactions to his tweets.
Way down. And his followers, I think, are down as well. I end on
so hard to know. So much of that is bots, and
Well, I know that, but I mean, you have to figure, they kind of know what they're talking about.
Yeah, it could just be the GRU resetting their,
Well, Twitter keeps doing weird stuff with everybody's talking about Twitter's numbers and how crazy they are. And
yeah.
So who knows? Okay, I'm going to end on this one because this one really made me squirm.
Okay.
Military members with emblems on their jumpsuits.
Yes, I saw that. It's very unsettling.
Okay. How did that even get through?
I cannot believe a commander would let that happen. It's unheard of. You're not going to see, Reagan patches on uniforms. Again, if you substitute another president, it's inconceivable.
Or how about this?
Obama
Hitler.
Patches?
SS.
What did you say? Hitler?
Hitler, SS.
Okay, well, you don't have to go right to Hitler.
I can if I want.
Well, you can. It's kind of a conversation stopper if you take it right to Hitler.
It reminded me of that. I mean, that Coco Chanel is rumored to have done a lot of the uniforms for Hitler. And it was a design feature. It was designed. That emblem was designed.
What, the Nazi? Yeah.
All the Nazi uniforms were allegedly and pretty much proof positive that Coco Chanel had done the designs.
Anyway, I'm kind of amazed that the commanders let this go through,
and not a word really about it. It was a reported story with no information about the report. And this gets me back to where I started in all of this before, which is This is scary. He does whatever
if you
he
have
wants.
members of the military starting to wear partisan
Right.
insignias.
When that happens, we are in deep shit.
Yeah, I mean, I hope maybe someone like it's too much to hope for that some of the military members of Congress on the Republican side would say anything about this.
Oh, God.
In a normal country, they would.
We end there. Anything for, you want to forecast for the next week, or you just like, ta-ta?
Well, a little curious how Trump handles 75th anniversary of D-Day, if he has anything interesting to say as that rolls around. But otherwise, no. I'm just want to see if they can get Mueller to testify. It doesn't look good.
Well, I'm my argument on the Mueller thing, and this is what I want to see happens, is somebody gets smart and says to him, "You're a public servant. You're a paid public servant." That means public servant, and you need to be in public with your testimony.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus Christ, you can't be a prima donna when Congress calls you.
No, but it tells me who he really is, and you know how I feel about this dude, and I said it way back when, before everybody else, remember? I didn't like the way he played this. Hello.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll see. We'll pick it up next time we talk.
Okay. We will see you next time.
See you next time. You are listening to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern at HalliCasserJayne.com and is available wherever you listen to your podcasts. Be sure to find us on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, iHeart Podcasts, on all your favorite apps. You can find the Halli Casser-Jayne Show on your Alexa device too. Just say the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. Oh, and come play with me on Twitter at the Halli CJ Show. As much as in any time in American history, and some would contend more than ever, American politics seems driven by conflict and anger. People have started to feel like strangers to one another. Loved ones at the dinner table behave like enemies. Toxic political dialogue, hate-filled rants on social media, and agenda-driven news stories have become the new norm. Where does all the anger come from? And I think you're wrong, but I'm listening. Two working moms from opposite ends of the political spectrum contend that there is a better way. Sarah Stewart Holland comes from the left, Beth Silvers from the right, and they invite those looking for something better than the status quo to pull up a chair and listen to the principles, insights, and practical tools that they learned hosting their fast-growing podcast, Pantsuit Politics. Let's talk. How nice to have both of you here. Seriously, what fun this is. How interesting this is. Hope springs eternal, says the skeptic. But before we get into the weeds, introduce yourselves. First, Sarah Stewart Holland. Who are you? Where do you come from? Your political point of view. Give us a background.
Well, I will introduce myself here as I do on every single podcast, which is I'm Sarah from the left. I live in my hometown of Paducah, Kentucky. I went to law school, worked in Washington, D.C. in politics for several years before moving back to raise a family. I have 3 little boys, ages 10 to 4.
Okay, and you, Beth?
I'm Beth Silvers. I live in Union, Kentucky, right outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. I practiced law for 6 years, did work in a law firm as an HR executive for 5, and now I am Beth from the right on Pantsuit Politics. I think it might be more accurate to say Beth from the slight right. I've been thinking about modifying my intro that way because I am a pretty moderate Republican, and as everyone knows, the landscape is shifting all the time. But I love talking with Sarah on our show and kind of working through how we both feel about politics.
So how'd you two to come together? This is interesting to me. Talk to me. Oh, Sarah.
Well, we went to college together. We were in the same sorority, the same graduating class, and we stayed acquaintances after graduation. We weren't close when we started recording the podcast. We had not met in person for 13 years. We reconnected over motherhood and natural birth, and Beth started guest posting on my blog at the time, Bluegrass Redhead, where I would talk about parenting, and then I would talk about politics pretty unapologetically. And one of her posts in particular called Nuance basically asking people to not feel like there was only two sides to every issue and we all had to stake our ground and defend it to the death was really popular. And I said, hey, would you ever be interested in starting a podcast with me? And she said, I don't know what a podcast is. And I said, don't worry, we'll figure that part out. And that's how Pantsuit Politics was born. Such an interesting story. Beth, what led you to thinking Sarah was wrong, but okay, I'm going to listen to her? That's kind of interesting to me, too.
Well, I always found Sarah's perspective enlightening, even when I disagree with her strongly. And still to this day, she says things that surprise me, that cause me to stop and really analyze my own positions more. She asks questions in a different way than I'm wired to ask questions. I'm smarter because I listen to Sarah, and I always want to be smarter. Wow. That was Sarah. Say something. That's the best friend I could ever have. Oh yeah, no, it's totally the same is absolutely true for me. Beth is a very careful, considerate person, interviewer, citizen, parent, partner, and so watching the way her brain works and how she thinks through issues really does. It makes me better. I mean, what I always say is we're very complementary. Our approach to politics, our approach to values and all these different things is very different. And so when we stop seeing it as we have to pick a winning side in all these debates, one way to approach things is better, and started seeing it as, no, we are better when we can see the strengths and weaknesses of each side. It really shifted the way that we talk to one another. It shifted the way I think about everything, honestly. It's interesting also toxic politics didn't happen overnight. It's been a long time in the making. And I think that's important to understand. And I think it's generational too, and how each generation saw things. I'm from the boomer generation, and we were hot from day one. 17 years old, and we were like crazy people on politics, breaking the norm, because I know my parents' generation wasn't quite the same way, even with World War II. And I'm wondering, your generation, did you feel that it was toxic always, or did you watch it become toxic, which might have better prepared you to deal with some of this than, let's say, some of the hotheads in my generation? Well, I would say that growing up as a small child with just sort of politics as an environment, I didn't register any toxicity. I do think the landscape started to change as I matured and my consciousness about politics started to develop. So you see the contract with America in 1994. You see the Lewinsky scandal, which I, very much remember growing up. Clinton's first election, I remember watching the debate. And, when I look back, I think how instrumental my first presidential election was. I voted my very first presidential election was in 2000. And to watch, the candidate I vote for win the popular vote, but lose in the Electoral College, and then be in college and being in law school during the Bush administration, I think for me personally, that was very formative. It formed a lot of the ways that I think about politics and government and the structure. And I think, if I'm being honest, for me and a lot of people of my generation, there was a lot of cynicism from watching the animosity towards each side and the way that the issues were formulated, and just that election generally. And I think it's our development along those lines has only grown and increased. And I think that with the recession, with September 11th, with all the Iraqi war, I think that you see with our generation this developing attitude that is cynical about politics, that can be very disempowering about the process. And I think that it has been formative for so many of us. I'm a pretty old millennial. I'm at the very first year, but I very much identify with that generation and not Generation X. And I think that all that's been very formative. See, what I find has changed is the blame game
everybody's blaming everybody else. Nobody's taking responsibility for anything. And that's where I think there is a core problem here. And I do trace that, by the way, back to, you can go back to the 60s and you can go back to the Vietnam War and all of that. But that wasn't about blame so much as right versus wrong. I think now we're into the blame game. It's your fault. If this hadn't happened, where are you on blame on all of this? Have either of you discussed that or thought about that, or is it necessary or unnecessary in our conversations?
We talk a lot about responsibility on the podcast and what our responsibilities as citizens are. I think that's the big question that we have for ourselves. There's only so much we can control. Within our sphere of control as citizens, how do we take as much power and influence there as possible and exercise it wisely? As you and Sarah were talking about your previous question, I was thinking, in my childhood, I knew that politics was bad, like politicians were dishonest. There were jokes about that all the time. The shift that I've observed is it's not just that politicians are bad, it's that your fellow Americans are bad. And what we talk about on Pantsuit Politics in our book is that, look, politicians are us. The government is us. This isn't a separate sphere, but media has allowed us to kind of distance ourselves and watch it all like a show. And so we do blame something external to us for where we are instead of asking, how am I contributing to this?
Good point. But I also would say this. I don't think that the media is creating the show. We'll talk about that in a minute, about cable TV and all of that, because it is now a show. But let's get here. Pantsuit Nation. I love the title.
No, it's Pantsuit Politics.
What did I say? I said Pantsuit Nation. I've got that on my head too.
Yeah, it's a common mistake.
No, I had them on my show recently. But Pantsuit Politics. But Pantsuit, Hillary Clinton. What's with the title here?
When I first came up with the idea of a podcast, the first thing I thought I would do was interview friends of mine, women in politics, because I had worked for Hillary Clinton's 2007 presidential campaign. I just completed Emerge Kentucky training, and I thought, okay, I'm going to interview all these women that work in politics. And Pantsuit, because of Hillary, because of a lot of things, signaled a femininity, and I wanted to attach it to politics also. I just really like alliteration. And so it just rolled off the tongue. And so when I used it, and then I thought, well, it's still relevant. When Beth came on as a co-host and we decided we wouldn't focus on just interviewing women, but it's still relevant because it's so rare to hear two female voices, and only two female voices, discussing politics in the way that we do. I mean, we really wanted to have conversations we weren't seeing anywhere else. And so the name stuck. I still thought it worked really well. And it's sad to me that so often the word pantsuit triggers all this Hillary Clinton imagery, but it is what it is at this point.
It's not a bad image, though, for Hillary or for any of us, actually. So I think it's a good thing. So I wanted to bring up this thing about what the networks are doing, and not the networks so much as what cable news is doing, and how politics has turned into blood sport and reality TV. That's where we are right now. We're on reality TV. And their ratings are going through the roof. Everybody's. It's curious to me that you guys then make an attempt to have realistic conversation without all the screaming, the ranting, the raving, which Matt and I do on my show as well. We call ourselves two reasonable Jews. Because it's amazing to me that he and I have these conversations and we don't kill each other. Even though we come from the same side, actually. I'm a little bit more radical probably than he is. But that being said, to the right, by the way, than he is, which most people are surprised about. But that being said, here we are, and yet people are listening to you guys. So maybe the reviews aren't correct out there. Maybe people aren't wanting the fractious nature of our politics that they're getting as much as as the networks think we do. What either of you have something to say on that?
Well, when we started, we didn't know what we were making. We sat down and just wanted to talk to each other honestly, and that was our commitment. And we had no idea if anyone would listen. I knew my mom would. Other than that, I didn't know. And Sarah always says that the listeners who found us we're like thirsty wanderers in the desert. I think that it's true that a lot of Americans love the show because reality shows are fun and they're interesting and they don't require anything of us. And so it's easy to just pop the TV on and see what's happening and then go back to your life. But that's not the totality of America. And I think there are many Americans who are interested in participating civically, who are interested in thinking deeply about these issues, and they aren't being served very well in cable news for sure. So we're small, and we've talked about how maybe we would have more listeners if I were more of a Fox News kind of Republican, or if Sarah were more of a progressive kind of radical Democrat. But our purpose is not to imitate what we already see out there. It's to just be ourselves and do what we're trying to do. And we're really grateful that that has attracted such a dedicated audience.
Listen, but we all know peace, love, and understanding doesn't sell. That's what they say. And what I guess is the model here is that you're showing that that isn't true. But I think what you're also saying is that you think what you're offering differently is depth.
Yes.
And I totally agree with you. That is lacking in all of our discourse. Beth, do you agree that this is one of the most fractious points in American history? And I bring it up because I contend that the mood of the country comes from the top. You support Trump? Yes? No? Yes?
I do not. No, I did
Okay.
not. I did not vote for the president and
Okay.
do not approve of his conduct.
Okay. But so many people do. And should we be concerned? Is that a conversation worth having? Because this book that you guys have written is about finding a way to dialogue without killing each other and to, to listen, which we'll talk about in a second. You don't have to be wrong. You just have a different point of view. But
Right.
but when we know that this kind of fractiousness is coming from the top, no matter what we do, the buttons are pushed day in, day out. What anger! That's what I think we're all about right now. Are people off the wall for buying into the crap?
I think that it's really important to always pull back from binary ways of looking at things. I mean, that's what we try to do in our show. That's what we're really trying to represent even in the title of our book. And I think it is important and essential to call out the failure of leadership at the very top and the way it has contributed to not only our national dialogue, but a rise in hate crimes and anti-Semitism. We have to do that. We don't have a choice. And we don't have to make every conversation about Donald Trump. Both things can be true. We are complicated people, and we are capable of having hard, complicated conversations that don't revolve around you either hate him or love him, and there's no in between, and we're going to pick sides, and if you don't pick my side, you're the enemy, and shut it all down. I mean, even if you feel that the greatest risk to our democracy right now is the anger and really enemy-driven posturing of the president, I don't think that the solution to that is to fight more with more, to be more hateful, to be more angry. I think that righteous anger can be a motivator. I think you see that in every civil rights struggle and every progress as part of this country, but it has to be channeled. It's not a constant Twitter thread. That's not going to get us anywhere. And it makes people feel and unempowered. And what we're saying is a different type of conversation, a way to talk about values, and even your moral indignation can be the first part in the democratic process to really bring about change. But we have to have these conversations carefully. If it just becomes us screaming at each other on social media, I mean, that's how we got here. And to channel my inner Dr. Phil, like, is it working? Are we happy with how it's going right now from either side? Because if we're not, then we have to try something different, try something that requires more nuance, that is more difficult, that requires us to step away from that black and white, you're in or you're out, you're on my team or you're not posturing.
I think that's true. Here's where I have a problem. My problem is that we are being baited to that kind of behavior. The entire reason for his existence is because he is a divide and conquer kind of guy, and that we fall prey to it. But I also want to take it one step further to say that it just, I feel like we all have this deep-seated anger or feeling of separation, and maybe that's because of the internet and we are separated so much. That's embedded in all of this, and that's why it's so easy to, gin us up.
It's hard to separate that out, isn't it? I was thinking about your question, is this the most fractious time in our history? And I don't know. I mean, I think we have a profoundly immature and divisive person in the Oval Office, plus this new tool that allows him to share every thought with us. And would we have thought the same of previous presidents had they access to a Twitter feed? Maybe, I don't know. I do think that I have had to shift my thinking about this a little bit. I would have said before the Trump presidency, well, the president can be kind of immature and mean-spirited and it not have that much of an effect on the country if the president is doing a good job on policy and on general leadership. And I have seen through the Trump administration, while I disagree with a lot of policy and leadership from the administration as well, that it profoundly matters how the president conducts himself and how he talks to us as a nation, especially now that he's talking to us all the time. And so as we approach a new election, I'm trying to ask myself, what does the country need in response to this? Not just who checks my policy boxes, or who even has the best experience, honestly, to lead. I'm trying to think about how can we move forward in the way we relate to each other as Americans after 4 years of being told every day, this is the right team and this is the wrong team, and this is an existential battle to the death, no matter what the topic is.
Point well taken. Our politics has been reduced to sound bites. I want to talk about that too, because most people read the headlines, they read the chirons on their cable channels, they listen to 45-second summaries on the evening news. One of your talking points is that we need to recognize that issues are nuanced. You also have a new podcast, I think, right? Talking on nuance. And you can't be reduced to political talking points. I'll give you that. But Twitter is 280 characters. Hello.
Well, we can always step away from Twitter.
Oh, you can, huh?
Of our democracy. At least I sure hope not. And again, we are the committee. We are in control of our own behavior and what behavior best represents our values. And, if Twitter leaves you angry and self-righteous and feeling like all is lost, then step away, because while it is part of the story, it is not the entire story. There is so much work going on in our communities, in our states, across the country. Good work that doesn't bubble up and trend on Twitter. That's not going to make it to CNN. But if you use that as the prism through which you see the reality of our country, then yeah, you're going to be angry most of the time. But you're not going to be getting the full picture. And so I think that engaging with one another when we can see with curiosity what the experiences of our fellow Americans are, instead of just using Twitter or CNN or Fox News as the full and complete picture of the story of our country, the better off we will all be.
I have to tell you something. I just engaged in something interesting that Matt and I both did. We'll talk about it in the beginning of the show today. I hadn't watched the evening news in years. I'm a cable girl all the way. So I happened to fall into it last Saturday. And I went, am I listening to the same story that I've been listening to for the last, how many years on this thing? It was like walking into another universe. So I did an experiment and I watched each of the evening news, channels, ABC, CBS, and NBC this week. And I'm telling you, there's an alternative universe out there. There's no question about that. That's number one. But it gives you nothing but a 45-second soundbite. Now it's not, but it's nuanced by pictures and everything else as to how they want you to perceive it. I'm not sure where you go to get a fair and clear answers so much as I think what you have to do is take it all in and, be your own editor in these crazy times. Can I talk about listening? We all of us do podcasts, which is about the listening experience. I have found, unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to listen. You speak to respect the dignity of every person. Sarah, even when people are buying into criminality, is there a place to draw a line? Is that a fair question?
Absolutely. There are lots of places that we draw a line where we say that position is untenable, or that outlook will not be provided a platform on our show or anything that we have control over. There are unethical positions. There are immoral opinions. That's absolutely true. However, the answer to any policy, position, outlook, worldview, opinion is not to further dehumanize that person in response. Dehumanization, talking about people like they're garbage, they're human garbage, they're less than. That is always the first step in our downfall as a species. The worst events in human history is when we decided that we could do whatever we want to this other human being because they're not really human. They're not us. They're them. They're less than. And so that for us is the sort of guiding principle we try to keep an eye on, which is, yes, we can talk about worldviews and opinions and policy positions, and we can draw hard lines. I mean, I think that there is absolutely room for accountability and holding people responsible. But dehumanization is never necessary to hold somebody accountable.
Yeah, but we live in interesting times because I think what's different right now is everybody wants to score that political point. It really is win, lose. I must be right. There's a lot of righteousness in this country right now. Do you find it hard, though, sometimes to not lose your cookies, as I so often do, with stupidity, ignorance? Those things are out there.
Well, we occasionally we'll say we're dropping our nuance for a moment. That happens to us. We're people, and I think that the part of that that's helpful, though, is it reminds us that we are people. And yes, there are folks out there who deliberately lap up what is clear propaganda and misinformation. There are also just a lot of people who don't focus on the news the way that we do. And as you said, if you watch the evening news, you get 45 seconds of a story that takes 3 hours to put in proper context, and lots of research and a view of history in addition to a view of the present. And we get that people are just not up for that every day. And so we're trying to be a place where folks know that even if they don't agree with us, they're going to hear the context as far as we're able to share it. We try to be forgiving of our fellow Americans and compassionate about what they're dealing with, because the information age was supposed to make all of this easier for us, right? We're supposed to be better educated than we've ever been. That's hard when you have billions of fake accounts putting news in your face all day that you can't vet yourself. It's challenging. And so we try to have some grace for what people are dealing with.
In the book, you guys offer 10 tips for conversing, especially when we vehemently disagree. And by the way, these tips could be useful in a lot of areas of our lives. Marriage is a good place. Some of them could apply. I just want to say this is not just to be applicable to politics, and I love that about the book. But I love your suggestion that we can be curious explorers rather than a dedicated disciple. I think what you're really saying is we all need to detach from the emotion of it, which of course is easier said than done. No? One of you?
Yes.
That was easy.
Well,
go ahead.
I mean, I think that gets to what I said when you asked me about listening to Sarah. I want to be smarter. I don't want to just be more Republican every day. And I think a lot of us are so wedded to positions that we've staked out at some point in our lives, and we don't want to be wrong about those, or we don't want things to change and us have to reevaluate those opinions. And we have found that when you let go of that, even just a little bit, it gets so much more interesting. It gets to be so much more fun. We just had this really extended conversation about anti-abortion laws on our podcast, and that took us into questions about what life means before birth and after death that were fascinating. You know, it's intellectual exploration that I want to do all day long. And you can't get there if you're just stuck in, well, I'm pro-life or pro-choice. So it can be fun when you let go of the discipleship to a party line or to a previous opinion, and just see what's out there.
So tell me the truth. There are times you two want to kill each other, right?
I don't know. I don't ever feel that way.
Oh, that's good. You guys are very, very good. Exit the echo chamber is one of your tips. Okay, we talked a little bit about that. Politics is everywhere today. Should we pull away sometimes?
Absolutely. One of the things we talk about in our book is that we have to put politics in its place. That is not to say that we don't understand that there are political decisions being made every day that affect people's lives. It can mean life and death for certain people. But to exist solely in that framework all the time, to expect our political identities to hold the entirety of who we are, from what coffee we drink to our faith to our approach to parenting, it's not built to do that. You're asking too much of politics right now. And what I always say is I don't ever want to feel like I felt on election night 2016 again. It was awful. I felt like the world was ending. And what I learned that night, and what I've definitely learned since, is that things can be very intense, that I can hold my values, that I can be heartbroken for what I see as things coming down the bend that I think will be harmful to myself and people I love. That can all be true. But to put, everything in that container, to feel like all was lost when the next day the sun came up and my children were still happy and healthy, like I needed to hold all those things at the same time and not as politics to hold all those things. I just don't think it's up for the job.
Well, I share your pain of that night. Ouch. Still reverberating through every little piece of my soul, I have to say.
Absolutely. I think I'm realizing as we move forward, like with 2020, that I still have a lot of trauma about that election cycle. I think both of us carry still a lot of trauma about the Brett Kavanaugh hearing. Beth talks about that really openly and emotionally. And I think we can say those things. We can be honest and vulnerable and say those things. But when it turns from vulnerability to defensiveness, when we harden ourselves in the face of our hurt, not to get to Brené Brown about it, but that's not serving any of us. It's not serving us as individuals, and it's not serving us as a society.
I want to leave it on this. So this is kind of a strange thing to go to, but I had to. Our entire conversation has been based on the assumption that conflict is actually bad. What if it's not? What if letting things come to a boil, as happened in 1861, is a necessary part of democracy?
I think we agree with you about that. I mean, part of what we share with people all the time is we are not advocating that you find common ground on everything. We are not saying that empathy and endorsement are the same. Sometimes we listen to understand and we walk away saying, wow, I really disagree with that person. And my work now is to be a warrior in the legislature or as an advocate to dispute what that person has to say. That's okay. As Sarah said, the point for us is that we treat each other as fellow human beings throughout that process, that we recognize all of our roles in this democratic experiment that we have going as a country. And I think a lot about how I would not wish for us to, if I could do 2016 over again, I would not wish for us to be where we are today. But here we are, and I do think there are some opportunities in it. I think a lot more people are interested in civics than have ever been. I think people are becoming more informed. People who've taken aspects of our liberties for granted are waking up to that, including me. And so we can make the best of this situation. And I do think healthy conflict is necessary to doing that. And part of the reason we keep talking is we find value in that disagreement.
I think the title of the book could have also been The Power of Positive Thinking. Love you guys. Love your podcast. Love the book. You. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. Thank you for having us.
Sure thing. I've been speaking with Sarah Stewart Holland and Beth Silvers, the co-authors of I Think You're Wrong, But I'm Listening, and the co-hosts of the popular podcast Pantsuit Politics. For more information on their book and their podcast, visit I Think You're Wrong, But I'm Listening.com. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show is a production of RESEC, LLC. Be sure to tune in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show at hallicasserjayne.com or listen on your favorite app. New podcasts are posted Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern.